Tanse, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Creeson Agecoutay. Thank you for joining us. A date has been set for sentencing a self-declared serial killer who targeted Indigenous women in Winnipeg. Jeremy Skibitsky will be sentenced on Wednesday, August 28th at 10 a.m. He was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder earlier this month. Skibitsky admitted to police in 2022 that he strangled and drowned Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Buffalo woman in his apartment. Skibitsky pleaded not criminally responsible due to mental disorder. Chief Justice Joyal was not convinced. On July 11th, he ruled the killings were intentional and racially motivated. Joyal said in his 190-page written decision this week that this case is, quote, emblematic of much of what is associated with the tragedies that underlie the grim reality of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada, unquote. The later sentencing date was chosen so family and community members would have time to prepare victim impact statements. Families of the victims of the late serial killer Robert Pickton are once again left disappointed in their fight for justice for their loved ones. A BC judge is denying their ability to intervene on the RCMP applying to destroy evidence collected during their investigation. APTN's Tina House has this report.
It was at this press conference held by Justice for Girls that lawyer Sue Brown informed the public that the RCMP in BC had applied to get permission to destroy evidence collected in the Pickton investigation.
This latest step by the RCMP to seek disposal of all exhibits, a mere 20 years after the investigation on the farm began, sends the message that the missing and murdered women's cases are closed, despite the majority of them being unsolved. Let's be clear. Not only is this an affront to justice and a devastating blow to the families of these women, allowing those who disappear and murder women and girls to do so with impunity is a human rights violation.
Dr. Sasha Reed has assembled the world's largest database on serial killers and has studied the Pickton investigation.
Through our investigations, we have uncovered the fact that this is not a complete case. This is, as far as I'm concerned, an open and ongoing investigation that requires thorough, adequate, and complete investigation. If we fail to stop these applications to dispose of evidence, we essentially vitiate any chance of bringing additional perpetrators to justice.
And now, 6 months after that press conference and numerous court hearings for the families to get permission to intervene on the destruction of evidence, a Supreme Court judge in BC has denied standing to the families in this matter. For family member Lorelei Williams, whose cousin Tanya Holick's DNA was found on the farm, it's another roadblock in her long wait for justice.
What would I say to the judge? I would say, what if this was your daughter? What if this was your sister, cousin, family member, close friend? What would you want for your family member? What would you want for this person? Because it's not just me, it's so many families across the country who have to deal with this, and they are sending a horrible message to predators out there that they can get away with murder.
To me, this sends the message that space in RCMP buildings is worth more than answers and justice for the horrific atrocities that took place.
Sue Brown and Lorelei Williams, along with other family members, say their fight is far from over and will continue to lobby for those lost voices to be heard. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
This month marks 2 years since Pope Francis apologized to Indigenous people at Musquecheese, Alberta, for the Catholic Church's role in residential schools. He has now written a letter to all Catholics calling for the continuation of work with Indigenous peoples on justice, healing, and reconciliation. During the visit, the Catholic Bishops of Canada pledged $30 million for healing and reconciliation projects identified by Indigenous peoples and overseen by the Indigenous Reconciliation Fund, or IRF for short. The IRF has raised more than $15 million and approved 166 projects. the bishops of Canada will make their records available to Indigenous researchers and communities, including mission, sacramental, and burial documents. Discussions with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people on the doctrine of discovery will continue, and engagement with the Canadian government on Indigenous artifacts in Vatican museums. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs are holding their annual General Assembly this week on the Wayway-Sikapo Urban Reserve just outside Brandon. The Grand Chief and AFN Regional Chief positions are up for election this year. There is talk of the Sioux Valley Dakota Nation rejoining the Assembly, and the Shoal Lake 40 First Nation, which is part of the Treaty 3 Council in Ontario, is making a bid to join the AMC. Today, the Assembly will decide who its Grand Chief will be. They will also vote on who represents them at the AFN in Ottawa. Kathy Merrick is looking to keep her seat as Grand Chief. The other two in that race are George Kemp of Barons River and Daryl Shorting of Little Saskatchewan. Meanwhile, the AFN regional seat has been vacant since Cindy Woodhouse-Nepanak joined the AFN or moved to the AFN. There are 5 people looking to replace her. They are Sydney Ballantyne from Opaskwayak, Tyler Duncan of Norway House, David Harper, former MKO Grand Chief, Sheldon Kent of Little Black River, and Willie Moore of Nisquamish Cree Nation. As the Government of Canada enters the second year of its 10-year National Action Plan to end gender-based violence, it was announced Monday that they and the Manitoba government will provide more than $6 million each to 19 community initiatives across the province to address the issue. Gender-based violence is abuse meant to harm, control, or otherwise hurt someone based on their gender. Indigenous women are most at risk. Women in Gender Equality Canada created separate agreements with every province and territory to address the needs of their residents. Half of each province and territory's funding must focus on preventing gender-based violence, not just addressing it after it happens. Federal Minister for Women and Gender Equality, Marcy Ian, says more men and boys need to be engaged in bringing gender-based violence to an end.
Gender-based violence is one of the most pervasive, deadly, deeply rooted human rights violations of our time. It disproportionately impacts women and girls, certain populations that are at risk of GBV, of course include Indigenous women and girls. Just under 5% of the population, but 21%, because I need to add that percent, 21% of those impacted by gender-based violence, intimate partner violence.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. A woman in the Yukon has survived a grizzly bear attack and is able to tell her story. We'll tell you more when we return in about 3 minutes. Welcome back. A Yukon woman is sharing her story of survival after she was attacked by a grizzly bear near the town of Haines Junction. Jordan Hasselbeck has the details on how she managed to escape with her life.
On June 30th, Vanessa Chaput was out for a run along this trail near the village of Haines Junction when she came across a group of 3 grizzly bears.
I was right beside them, and it was too close. There was no way that
Chaput, who is Casca, says she spent a lot of time in bear country and knows what to do during an encounter.
I have a really good respect for them, just because growing up with my dad and everything and going hunting, you're in bear country, like things are gonna happen, and we have run into bears in the past, but I've never run into something like this before.
She tried to give the bears some space, but her dog Luna got off leash and chased 2 of the bears away. Then the 3rd bear, a male, charged at her.
When the bear had taken me down with my head in its mouth, my first thought was just kind of protect your vitals. So I went straight into the fetal position. My saving grace was from Walmart.
Chaput was wearing a plastic hair clip like this one, which broke in the bear's mouth. She believes that stunned the bear and it let her go. Once free, she quickly got behind a tree.
So I chose this tree right here, and I was able to get in between, and the bear ran in between the willows. I was watching him, and he turned around and charged back at me and actually stopped right in front of the tree.
The bear then turned its attention to Luna, who was barking.
If it wasn't for my dog barking, the bear was going to come finish the job.
With the bear distracted, Shapu made her way towards the highway.
I looked at my body and I seen like my arm, and I had blood coming down my face. So I actually had, my one eye had gone red from the blood. I knew I was bleeding heavily and that I needed to get to help. So I didn't run. I just kept my eyes towards where the bear had gone. And then I walked up and onto the highway.
She called 911 and her husband, who came and picked her up. A nearby campground was evacuated, and over that weekend, Yukon conservation officers euthanized 3 bears that matched the description from the attack. The area where the attack happened has since been mulched, and rain has washed away the blood. Shapu spent a couple weeks in hospital.
So I have puncture wounds all up in my arm. I have a broken bone. I have a lot of nerve damage in that area. And then my tricep was torn into places.
She says she doesn't feel any animosity towards the bears and hopes that others can learn from her story.
Like, I don't blame the bears for what happened. I don't blame my dog or myself. It was wrong place, wrong time, and like, again, it could have happened to anybody.
Jordan Hasselbeck, APTN National News, Haines Junction.
Wow, our heart goes out to her. A Northern Manitoba First Nation says a federal funding shortfall is creating hardship at its personal care home. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
The Nissi-Chow-Asik Cree Nation is located in a remote part of the province, about 700 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. Its 24-bed personal care home is largely funded by Indigenous services, but Chief Angela Levasseur says funding shortfalls means the First Nation is having to cover the costs of essential drugs and supplies.
And it's creating this deficit of funding because we cannot let our elders suffer, go without much needed supplies, medications, vitamins, medical equipment that they need, etc., due to this shortfall. So it's creating a financial crisis for the personal care home.
Levasseur says one of the most frustrating things is that ISC is underfunding incontinence supplies for elders. She says the government only provides funding for 5 incontinence products per day, while clients often use up to 12.
I purposely highlighted this in my press release because of how inhumane this is for our elders, how degrading it is, how unacceptable it is, and what utter disrespect this shows for our elders.
Jessie Horodecki is the director of the personal care home. She says because of the lack of supply of incontinence products, staff are often forced to drive nearly 100 kilometers to Thompson to purchase more.
And when we run out of that 3-month supply, often we're running to the closest community, which is Thompson, and we're buying all the stock off the shelves at the local Walmart, just to hold us over until our next shipment comes in. And that, I mean, when you're buying from Walmart, it's, you know, quite a bit more expensive.
APTN News contacted Indigenous Services Canada, but did not receive a reply by airtime. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thank you, Fraser. The Congress of Aboriginal Peoples was kept out of a national meeting yesterday in Winnipeg. We have 2 guests in studio to tell us more. Stick around. Over on the East Coast, Halifax 18, Fredericton 22. Nain 17, La Grande River 17 as well. Val-d'Or 14, Gasp 19. Sarnia 28, Peterborough 27. Timmins 24, Big Trout Lake 19. Puckatawagan 20, Churchill 22. Winnipeg 21, Barons River 21 as well. Swift Current 29, Yorkton 22. Buffalo Narrows 21, Stony Rapids 18. Northern Alberta, high level 17, Fort McMurray 16. Lethbridge 25, Edmonton 19 and sun. Tofino 13, Kamloops 18. Prince Rupert 12, Fort Nelson 13. Dawson 12, Mayo 19. Yellowknife 16, Wrigley 12. Sax Harbor 7, Inuvik 17. Chesterfield 28, Cambridge Bay 11. Iqaluit 10, and Igloolik 4. On Tuesday, the Federal Minister for Women and Gender Equality co-hosted an event with Manitoba's Minister of Families, Nahani Fontaine. The federal provincial territorial meeting is with national Indigenous organizations to discuss issues involving Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit peoples. The meeting at the Delta Hotel in downtown Winnipeg was closed to the public, but not just them. The Congress of Aboriginal Peoples, or CAP, was also not let in, something they were told 2 weeks ago. So they met in a separate room. Charlene Lavallee is the president of the Association of Métis, Non, and Status Indians of Saskatchewan, one of several organizations who make up CAP. She says her group has been part of these meetings for 25 years. And after speaking with Minister Marcy Ian Monday night, she thought CAP would be let in on Tuesday.
Inclusion is the best practice because no one organization or person, we can't take care of everybody, and everybody needs to be included. And for any group to be excluded is a disservice to the people that are out there. We're an urban Indigenous organization. We get a lot of people coming in, inquiring and looking for help that a lot of the organizations don't connect with.
A Manitoba ministerial spokesperson referred questions about invitations to the gathering to the federal government. A statement, the Federal Department of Women and Gender Equality said Minister Ian met with representatives from the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples yesterday to discuss emerging issues. Women and Gender Equality Canada has a long-standing relationship and continues to work with the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples and other Indigenous partners. For more on this, we're joined by Congress of Aboriginal Peoples National Vice Chief Kim Bowden and Odelia Cusance, who is currently on bail pending results of a federal review of her 1994 murder conviction. Thank you both for taking the time to speak with us. Kim, this meeting with the federal and provincial territorial ministers and Indigenous organizations is something the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples has been attending since its inception. This year, not only weren't you invited, but the floor it was being held on was blocked off and had security keeping people out. What happened here?
Well, they were directed by the ministry to block off that floor, that in particular floor, because Indigenous women were meeting, missing an Indigenous women file. And what happened is that this is actually at a prior meeting that we had at the Shaw Center in Ottawa. We were there as well because we were not invited. And so we caught wind that there was another meeting happening here in Winnipeg. And so we booked off a room, and we were hoping that other people would come in and discuss what was happening in that other meeting. That didn't happen. What they did is they put security to a point where they even told some of our delegates or some of our leaders they were not allowed to go to the second floor, and that we were actually sectioned off into a particular room and left there. And they said, no way, you're not allowed, you can't go to the second floor, you're not welcome. And that's how we felt, we were not welcome. On a file that we've been working on for over probably close to, I'd say 30 years. And yeah, and it's unfortunate because it's a very important file. We've been, like I was saying, we're knee deep into all this stuff, and CAP does make a difference. We know we do. So it was frustrating.
Really briefly, can you explain why you're being blocked out of these discussions?
To me, it's all about politics. And the federal government has a policy they call it a distinction-based policy approach, and they don't believe that CAP represents Métis, non-status, and also status Indians living off reserve. That's what they don't believe. And yeah, I mean, it's really frustrating.
Odelia, as someone who has experienced all you have, what would you like to have added to this meeting with your voice and experience?
Well, I was invited by CAPS to this meeting, and once I got here, I was very shocked and very shocked to see this happening like this, like with the CAPS not being involved with the meeting, and they're one of my biggest supporters, and I find it unfair, and I was shocked myself. I couldn't believe it. I said, does this happen? Like, even watching like the second floor security there, like it felt like, what is going on? It kind of reminded me of like, I'm not sure what the word is, but I just couldn't believe it, how, you know, especially CAP's been there. My friend Kim's been supportive of me and my sister, you know, my situation, and I just wish that, you know, that, in my words, I said, I don't know if I should say that, but they should grow up. Like, they're supposed to be role models. But that's just my opinion. And since coming to the meeting, I was just like, it was kind of like embarrassing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Kim, a statement from Minister Marcy Ian's office says she met with CAP and continues to work with you. Are you hopeful for some sort of a reset, especially on matters involving the safety and well-being of Indigenous women?
Well, she did meet with CAP. Unfortunately, her message to us is that we were not welcome to that meeting. And even the one in the Shaw Center in Ottawa, we had an opportunity to speak with some of the deputy ministers and other people that were involved. Other ministers actually that hold a file throughout the premiers. At least that happened. This time, they made sure that they slammed the door on us. I felt like, I'm going to use a term, I felt like we were in solitary confinement, you know, and it was really, really frustrating. So I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope with the federal government at this point. I know we're going into an election, and things have to change, and unfortunately, I really don't see it happening for the next, you know, until the next election. Yeah.
Well, we'll be sure to follow this more down the road here. Kim and Odelia, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's your midday newscast for this Wednesday, July 24th. We'll be back again in a few hours for your evening national newscast with more news updates. From everyone here in our HQ in Winnipeg and from our reporters across the country, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching.